The feedback had come in about a hospital CEO named Leon, and his leadership feedback was not positive. Leon's direct reports were unified in raising significant issues with Leon's leadership, noting that he was intimidating, often used fear as a motivation tool, was a poor communicator, was too withdrawn, and even seemed disengaged. Before I was about to go into a meeting with Leon to discuss what his colleagues and employees had written about him, his chief operations officer stopped me. She held my hands in hers and said, "Greg, I don't know what my colleagues put in their feedback about Leon, but I know what I put in there." She looked at me as though I was about to go to my execution. "Good luck. I'm praying for you." I'll be honest. Even after all my years in the military, I was very intimidated by this man. When I walked into Leon's office, he did not look happy. We both knew what was in the report, and it was not good. I didn't know how he'd receive it. I didn't know how he would receive me. Knowing that I needed to lead from a place of strength, I calmly sat down. Suddenly, I had an inspiration. "Leon," I asked, "I'm curious. You've been CEO of this organization for 27 years. What do you think your legacy will be?" He gave me a long look. Finally, he said, "Well, if it's based on what's in that feedback, it's not going to be a great legacy." He paused. "The only thing I can think of right now is that they'll say I worked really hard." I asked, "Is that the legacy you want?" He said, "Absolutely not. Frankly, that thought is incredibly disappointing." He sighed heavily. After another long pause, Leon finally looked up at me. I was stunned by what he said next. "We've got a lot of work to do, don't we? Let's get at it." I was amazed by his humble response and incredibly proud of him for being completely honest about himself. Over the next several months, Leon threw himself into the hard work of transforming his leadership style. He made substantial changes in the way he interacted with his team and the feedback he gave people. There were certain aspects that he couldn't change, his personality, for instance. But by learning more about his personality, Leon's understanding of how to manage his team grew exponentially. In his case, Leon fits the personality profile of the strategic thinker. He tended to be very dominant, reserved, incredibly challenging, and systematic. This personality type can be impatient and is quick to identify what's wrong in any given situation. They don't focus on relationships as much as they focus on results. Leon's personality was a big reason the hospital had been named one of the best in the country. But it was also a factor behind why his staff struggled to work for him. When Leon realized that many of the people on his team were very different from him, he began to understand that they needed other things from him to perform at their best. In the past, his modus operandi had been to only provide feedback when things weren't going well. If he didn't give his staff feedback, in his mind, they should assume that they were doing a good job. He had never felt the need for verbal affirmation. Why should they? But in learning more about his personality and those of his team members, Leon began to understand that many of them needed more positive feedback. He made a point to give his employees affirmation, and the morale on his team got a huge boost. Leon had been a CEO since he was a young man. For the whole of his career, he'd focused on organizations, efficiency, and getting results. But Leon hadn't spent much time at all thinking about his own style of leadership. It was a profound moment of truth for him when he stopped to consider the legacy he was building. When he intentionally looked at the effect of his leadership on the people around him, Leon was forced to acknowledge some hard truths about himself. However, as he took a good look in the mirror, he began to learn even deeper, profound truths. He worked until the day he retired to transform his competence as a leader. And when he did finally retire, his legacy was more than just, he worked hard. In fact, they named a hospital wing after him.